Welcome here to the FWA review, where I'm delighted to be joined by the England correspondent of France football and our executive committee member Philippe Auclair. The title decided after dazzling all season. It ended on rather a damp note, but I think probably the headline there, special delivery, sums it up rather well. Sorry, Jose.
Should we laugh?
No,
really?
because he won't forgive us.
Laugh.
No, not at all. But it was just the contrast of the two. Thank you, Jose. Again, as Pep returned back to his hotel, I feel he's rather blasé about the whole thing because he's won himself a few titles, but for the rest of the Manchester City fans, less so.
No, less so. I mean, coming back from playing golf with his son, apparently.
Yes.
And actually, some people were not ready at all for the announcement. Nobody could have thought that West Brom were going to do it. But yes, thank you, Jose. It's actually, you can almost wonder if there's something perverse about it, because as we know, Jose's career is in a way defined by Pep Guardiola since his stint at Real Madrid. I think that's the conspiracy theory, which is worth absolutely nothing, but it's quite extraordinary that it would happen in such circumstances, especially after what we all said about Manchester United a week ago.
It is remarkable.
It's just extraordinary, Dr. Jose and Mr. Mourinho, basically.
But perhaps also fittingly that Pep Guardiola wasn't going to get ahead of himself. I was in the tunnel after the match at Wembley, and we were asking if there was any potential that we could speak to Pep afterwards, speak to some of the players, and just get some quotes as if we can embargo. They don't get out, but very respectful, and we're not going to start celebrating ahead of it.
And Vincent Kompany, who chose to, it was fairly lively, the celebration, so you saw that, oof, gosh almighty.
If you can't, hopefully the neutral even in Manchester can admire Kompany, but what was so nice about that moment, and there are pictures of it here,
I'll hold some of it.
in the lounge room of his mother-in-law, wasn't it? And it was a beautiful moment, and I could just imagine my mother saying, if that was her lounge, why are they showing my lounge like this? Because the camera angles are dropping down to the yellow pages and all sorts of scenes. But it was a really nice way of understanding how built into the community these players have become, and that actually they don't spend the whole time living in the lavish lifestyle.
Not Vincent Kompany, certainly not. No. But I mean, I find it actually interesting when you say unlock potential, because that's the most frightening thing.
Yes.
They're quite a long way away from the finished article, so heavens above, heaven help, especially their rivals next season.
And there was a lovely moment of the lovely Instagram post of Silva.
David Silva and his son Matteo.
Yeah, that was a very, very poignant and very sweet moment. There've been some brilliant, lovely articles. Yes, there's always the question, isn't there, of the money in the game and the money that was put into it. But there's a nice quote from Paul Hayward, and he said, transformation with money, yes, but also a faith in creativity, speed, style and vision. And
none of the purchases, the players purchased by Manchester City is in the top 10 of all-time transfers.
Yeah.
None of them. The most expensive of them is Aymeric Laporte, of all people. And when you think they bought Gabriel Jesus for £33 million?
Yes.
Doesn't sound like bad business now, does it?
Yeah, no, it doesn't. There's some great articles. Paul Hurst.
That's quite extraordinary. I was wondering how many words did he manage to cram in there. It's like an inside story of Manchester City, which is actually fascinating. There's plenty of quite remarkable details about his method, and for example, the fact that I wasn't too sure about is that how much time does he spend with his players, analysing tactics, videos, and so forth? And the answer is very, very little. So plenty to discover in that piece there.
There's really nice articles all through the newspapers on the backroom staff as well, and Carl Walker talking about how it was a hard decision to make for Tottenham. It was a tough decision to make, but also that Tottenham might go on and win it and deny City a title, so they all know they've got to keep on and at it. But one article was particularly interesting was number one buy, and it alludes to what you say. After the downfall of last season for choice of goalkeeper in Edison, what a find.
And again, at the time when he was signed, people thought this is an awful lot of money to pay for a goalkeeper, even though there were the glowing reports from Portugal. But it was something like 35 million. But they now think at City that he's worth at least double that.
Good
within a single season.
Fantastic showing.
Oh, that's cruel, this one.
I know, this is... I'm going to hide behind the paper.
I think we both need to hold this one.
Can we just not mention it? It's nothing to do with us. We just had to draw it because it's so strong. Nobody loses to West Brom these days unless you're a slow, passive team who take a loaded shotgun and blow off your own toes. this is the modern United. I will say one thing, that does not give any of the credit to Darren Moore that he deserves, because he is a assistant coach that I've been tracking, because I'm doing a documentary on black managers and black coaching, but it hadn't been the time, and now he's even more in demand to go and film with him. But
good chance that he might keep the job.
I think there's a clamour for him too, isn't there?
I would imagine so.
We would really hope so. But on Manchester United, is this indicative of their season, that sometimes they seem to come out with great courage?
Isn't it? Because it goes from one extreme to the other. Sometimes in the same game, as a matter of fact, you see them produce superb performance in one game, then fall back to their usual deficiencies in terms of creativity. I was looking, the first half against West Brom, I don't think a single Manchester United player passed the ball with his first touch to another of his teammates. If you look at what Liverpool are doing, if you look at what City are doing, that's basically what you do. You try to quicken the tempo, and it was so slow. You couldn't recognise the team that had been so great the weekend before in the second half against City. So very bizarre. And they're going to end up with a points total which would be enough to win the league normally.
I have to ask you about Paul Pogba again. A complete contrast to his last performance.
Yeah, and his last performance was a contrast, studying contrast as well, because the first 45 minutes he was very poor, was losing the ball. Second half he was decisive, scoring twice in a matter of minutes. And this time we saw in that game against West Brom the bad side of Paul Pogba again, overcomplicating things. Actually, there were a few words by Mourinho at the end of the game which seemed to be again criticism of his star player. When you thought the war was over, maybe it's not after all.
Is he under the wrong manager ultimately?
It's very hard to tell. He's 25 years old,
yeah,
so you would imagine that we're starting to see the finished article, but we are not. Or maybe the finished article is just going to be this question mark of a player. How good is he really? He can be fantastic. How bad can he be? Sometimes he can be appalling, and you've got to take one with the other, and that's Paul Pogba. I don't know. It's for us French people, it's maddening, because he should be really one of our leaders at the World Cup, and it doesn't look like he's really shaping up to be one.
Where do you think this puts his World Cup on the bench?
He will be playing. No. He will be playing. Deschamps is very, very faithful to his players as a rule. He'll be there with N'Golo Kanté, maybe Benjamin Rabiot or Les Matuidi. We'll see, but he will start for France, no doubt.
Have you cast your vote yet for the football writers? No. Why?
No, because
Why?
I've got a coin in my pocket and I feel like flipping it, because every time I think I've made my choice, something happens. I thought it's got to be Mo Salah, right? I don't think I'm really betraying any secret when I say that. And then I see Kevin De Bruyne. I see a single pass in that game against Tottenham, which I think is the only quiet, my goodness. Probably the only player in the league who can pull up such a pass, because it required physical strength because of the challenge, extraordinary vision and fabulous delicacy of touch. I'm thinking that nobody else can do that, and you have to remember how he's lightened up the league. But what I would say is it's probably going to be a two-way race. We don't know, but I cannot remember a situation a year in which there would be two players as worthy a distinction at the same time. So can we split it?
Nope. No, we can't.
Can you imagine if we had Kevin De Bruyne and Mo Salah at our dinner? That would be fantastic.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Let's see how this could change things. Party like it's 1984. A fantastic headline there, and then it's our destiny. So many people have been talking about the combinations, the chemistry, so similar to this team. They haven't won anything yet, as Graham Souness very correctly pointed out to me. And so until they do, let's not start making contrasts. Let's start making contrasts until they win many titles. But destiny, it sometimes does seem to play a part.
Well, if you talk to Roma fans, which I have done, they also think it's destiny, but it's their destiny.
Their revenge.
The Forza del Destino will be more Romanista than... I have to say, I think people have a bit forgotten how good Roma were against Chelsea, for example. Yeah. Not going to be easy.
And now on to Arsenal. Now, Arsenal did fantastically well in Europe, and you wonder if more credit would have been given to that final goal that was fantastic.
Yeah.
But then this performance
Yes, which is in line, I think, with what's happened away from home. If you see the home and away league table, it's not a pretty sight for Arsenal. There has to be the. We have to put this in context. Their plane landed at 6 a.m. I think when they came back from Moscow. So basically, Wenger had nobody to choose from.
Yes.
So you knew they were going to be in trouble against an excellent Newcastle side. Magnificently managed by Rafa Benitez. But yes, away the bads, and now the possibility of seeing Burnley finishing above Arsenal.
Ultimately, though, they had a good night in Europe, playing some of the football that we expect of Arsenal.
And getting the result that they needed, and not entirely convincing, but getting the result they needed. But unfortunately, the draw is not very kind.
No.
Shall we say?
Yeah. So, Atletico Madrid.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts?
Well, my heart sank a bit when I heard the draw. It's not exactly a secret that I'm rather partial to the Gunners. It's terrible draw, and against a team that is a horrible team to play against. They're genuinely horrible. They're horrible to watch as well. It seems also that some of their players are getting back into form, and Griezmann as well. Who at a point during the season was not great. He's back there, and as you know, tough, physical. They seem also to have really weathered the move to the Wanda, which was not obvious because you would think move to a new stadium.
Yeah.
Remember the Emirates, for example. Even though in Europe the Emirates didn't really work against the Arsenal, but that's a different matter. It's going to be extremely tough, and I think the idea that they will qualify for the Champions League through the Europa League for most people now will have receded somewhat. And I think perhaps one of the things in their favour, they won't start as favourites, which they would have done against the other two teams.
Diego Costa, though, likely to be out for the first leg. Griezmann has been doing very well since January, since Costa came in that two-man setup, 4-4-2, but less confident on his own up front. That could be a real advantage.
He's definitely part of a two-man strike force. It's the same with France, by the way. When he plays with Giroud, I think he's much better. And yes, that is one little silver lining, but little one.
Okay, because they're so defensive anyway. They'll just sit back for that whole match anyway at the end, won't they?
I would imagine so.
Yep. Well, we're on the Champions League. Ollie Holt and Ollie Kay actually writing some excellent insight into this. But Gigi Buffon, please, he needs to just pull on his sword on this one. He's not going it.
He's not going to do it, is it easy? I mean, you would think, there's heat of the moment, cold of the moment. I don't know, because the reaction during the game completely understandable.
Yes.
No problem. The reaction just afterwards, no. And the reaction when he's had plenty of time to reflect, when he must have been made aware of the threats which have been directed, not just to the referee, but also to his wife, who's received the vilest abuse, absolutely hideous abuse. And that he doesn't seem to take that into account. And I'm afraid that his image has taken a big knock after that. It's not good. Not good at all.
Which is utterly remarkable because, as we know, Buffon is always the player that comes and fronts up and sits in a press conference, says exactly the right thing, is completely respectful to the opposition. It's extraordinary.
Yeah, and I suppose, the circumstances are such. I mean, there's also this idea in many countries that UEFA is definitely biased towards the two big Spanish clubs, and whatever happens, they always manage to find a way through. So it's all built up, but to be honest, it is nonsense. And what he's said about Oliver is totally unavoidable.
Yeah, and to be honest, the English clubs have that bit of paranoia as well. I know that Chelsea.
Okay, we all have it then.
Yeah, everyone but the big European clubs. Talking about cup finals, the FA Cup final, a lovely piece by Miss Raff about Chelsea and Arsenal getting to the FA Cup final, an all-London affair, and that will be a magnificent occasion. Also, to let you know that the Women's Football Writers Association Award will be announced next Friday. So one to watch out for. Mm-hmm. Who are you backing? I think you're backing Chelsea, aren't you?
Just
I'm going Arsenal.
Okay, for jinx. Okay, I'll jinx. I back Chelsea all the way.
I'm going historic victories and going with Arsenal. And another interesting discussion point: Matt Dickinson in the Times talking about
rather funny,
the Tunnel Club, and we talk a lot about or in England, we're very stuck in our ways on the fact that we have segregated fans.
Yes.
Is this something that English football, in a sense, has to become more European about?
Well, it depends if by European you think about France, where away fans are regularly banned from travelling.
Okay.
To be honest, I think actually England used to be one of the places which were the best, because you could go to a game, let's say, even like, let's say I'm an Arsenal fan and I've got a West Ham fan who's a friend of mine, season ticket, and I would go and watch the game with him, and he would basically vouch for me with his mates. And and that used to happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's gone much more tribal, but if you think it's worse in England than it is elsewhere, I don't think so. I mean, in Spain, for example, there's no tradition of fans travelling to away games.
Yeah, that's true.
Apart from perhaps Athletic, they do travel a bit.
It's extraordinary.
But otherwise, it's not something, unfortunately, which is part of the modern football culture. It has changed, and I think it's completely
in Germany,
universal.
they a lot of fans integrate.
In Germany, depending on the clubs
Yeah.
you're going to, some of them I wouldn't advise you to do that, to mingle too much, perhaps.
Maybe. Philippe, thank you for joining us on the week
Carrie.
that the title was decided. We've got some big events coming up, though. We have the shortlist for the Football Writers Book of the Year.
Yep.
That's on the 10th of May. Something else happening on the 10th of May.
Yeah, it's going to be a busy day.
Busy day. The Footballer of the Year and the Women's Footballer of the Year evening, which we're looking forward to immensely, whomever is gracing us with their presence. And also then to come on the 17th, and this is one to watch out for online, because we have some exciting names to announce. But FWA Live, looking ahead not just to the FA Cup final, but the World Cup. We're not going to jinx anything for any teams, because there's 2 FA Cup semi-finals to happen this week. But yeah, I get ready to get your tickets on that, because they're going to sell out like hotcakes.
Should be some decent guests.
There will
I
be.
understand.
Yes, it'll be a very exciting night, and it's at the Landmark Hotel, a favourite of footballing elite, and Lincoln City stay there too. It's good. So join us for all that coming up on the FWA, and you can also keep ahead of all our content on the website www.footballwriters.co.uk. For now, bye bye.